He wasn't supposed to survive. The storm had already decided that. Wind tore across the open stretch of coastal road like something alive, howling through broken guardrails and bending the tall grass flat against the soaked earth. Rain slamming down in sheets so thick it blurred the world into shadows and motion. And somewhere in that chaos, half buried in mud and gravel, a man lay unmoving, his breath shallow, his fingers barely twitching against the cold ground, as if reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. The air smelled of salt and rust, sharp and metallic, carried in from the nearby docks where waves crashed unseen beyond the darkness, and every few seconds lightning flickered across the sky, revealing the outline of a body that looked already claimed by the night. A U.S. Marine who had once stood tall now reduced to stillness, his jacket soaked through, his dog tags pressed cold against his chest, clinking softly with each faint rise of breath. And then there was another sound, almost lost beneath the storm, a dragging, uneven rhythm against the wet pavement, something pulling itself forward inch by inch, refusing to stop, refusing to disappear. From the edge of the ditch, where weeds tangled with broken wire and discarded debris, a shape emerged, low to the ground, trembling but relentless, a German shepherd, his coat darkened by rain and dirt, his frame lean to the point of fragility, a faint chain still trailing from his collar and scraping softly against the rocks with each movement. He should have turned away. Every instinct of survival should have driven him back into the shadows, away from the wind, away from the cold, away from the broken man lying in the open. But he didn't. His ears flattened against his skull as another gust tore through, his body shuddering. Yet his eyes stayed fixed on the figure ahead, amber catching the lightning for just a second, bright and knowing, as if something deep inside him had already made the choice long before this moment. He took another step, then another, paused slipping in the mud, chest heaving with effort, the chain snagging briefly on a piece of twisted metal before snapping free with a dull, final sound. And still he moved forward, closer now, close enough to smell the blood diluted by rain, the fabric soaked through, the faint human scent beneath it. All that spoke not of danger, but of something else, something remembered. The dog paused beside the Marine, lowering his head slowly, breath warm against the man's unmoving hand, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath with him, the storm raging on but distant, as if none of it mattered compared to this quiet, fragile space between two broken lives. He nudged the hand once, gently, then again, more urgently this time, a soft whine slipping from his throat, not loud, not desperate, but steady, insistent, like a promise he didn't fully understand yet refused to break. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled again, deep and hollow, and the dog lifted his head, scanning the darkness, listening, remembering something in the wind that made his muscles tighten and his gaze harden, not with fear, but with recognition, the kind that doesn't come from sight, but from scent, from memory, from pain that never fully fades. And then he looked back at the Marine, closer now, pressing his body against him, sharing what little warmth he had left, as if the storm could take everything else, but not this, not tonight. The rain does not slow, but something shifts in the space between them, something quieter than thunder, something that does not belong to the storm at all, because the man's fingers move again, just barely, a twitch against the soaked ground that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but not by him, not by the dog whose entire body seems to still at once, ears lifting despite the wind, breath held as if the world itself has narrowed down to that single fragile sign of life, and he leans closer, pressing his nose against the Marine's wrist, feeling the faint warmth beneath the skin, the pulse so weak it feels like memory rather than life. And yet it is there, and that is enough. He lets out a low sound, not quite a bark, not quite a whine, something in between, something steady, as if calling the man back from wherever he has drifted, and the Marine's lips part slightly, a breath catching his throat, shallow but real, his chest rising a fraction more than before, and for a moment the storm seems to pull back just enough to let that moment exist. The dog shifts his weight, circling once before lowering himself along the man's side, pressing close, sharing what little warmth remains in his own trembling body. His fur soaked, his ribs rising and falling too fast. But he does not pull away, does not retreat, because leaving is not something he remembers how to do anymore. The chain that once held him lies broken behind him, half buried in mud, its weight no longer pulling at his neck. But the mark remains, a dark line against wet fur, a reminder of hands that did not care whether he lived or not, of voices that spoke without kindness, of places that smelled wrong in ways he could never forget. And as another gust of wind carries that scent again, faint but unmistakable, something inside him tightens. His head lifts, ears turning toward the distant road, where headlights had once cut through the darkness, where voices had lingered too long before disappearing, where the air had carried the same sharp edge of metal, and something hidden beneath it, something that did not belong in the open world. He remembers that smell, not in words, not in images, but in the way his body reacts, the way his muscles tense, the way his breath shortens, the way his eyes sharpen with a quiet, burning focus that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with knowing. He looks back down at the Marine, at the man who now breathes just a little stronger, who shifts slightly under his touch. And something settles in a place, something simple and absolute, the kind of decision that does not need to be spoken. He nudges the man again, more firmly this time, then moves to the edge of his jacket, gripping the fabric carefully in his teeth, testing the weight, the resistance, the way the mud holds onto everything like it does not want to let go. And he pulls slow at first, just enough to shift the man an inch, then another, the effort immediate and draining, his legs shaking, his breath coming harder, but he does not stop. The ground resists, the storm presses in, and still he pulls, inch by inch, guiding the man away from the lowest part of the ditch toward a patch of higher ground where the water does not pool as deeply, where survival feels just a little more possible, and each movement is small, almost invisible, but together they become something larger, something stubborn, something that refuses to let the night take what it has already claimed. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the reach of the storm, a faint sound echoes, the kind that might be an engine or might be nothing at all, and the dog pauses for just a second, listening, weighing it against the memory in his bones. And then he returns to the task, because whatever is coming, whatever waits beyond the darkness, this comes first, this man, this breath, this fragile line between losing everything and holding on just a little longer. The ground rises only a few inches, but to a body that is nearly surrendered, it feels like a wall. And still he pulls, paws digging into the soaked earth, claws slipping, catching, slipping again, each breath sharper than the last as the cold begins to settle deeper into his bones. Yet there is no hesitation in him, no second thought, only the quiet, stubborn rhythm of movement, drag, pause, breathe, and drag again, until the man's shoulder finally rests against a patch of gravel that holds, firm beneath the rain instead of dissolving into it. The Marine's head tilts slightly, his face turned away from the wind now. And that small change shifts something, his breathing steadier, less interrupted, like a flame no longer directly in the path of a storm. And the dog notices, because he notices everything, the smallest signs, the faintest changes, the difference between fading and holding on. He releases the fabric gently and steps around, positioning himself once more along the man's side, pressing close, his body curved protectively, shielding him from the worst of the wind, his tail wrapped tight against his own legs to conserve what little warmth remains. And for a moment, just a moment, there is stillness between them again, not the stillness of defeat, but the kind that comes after effort, after choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. The rain softens slightly, not stopping, but easing just enough for distant shapes to begin to take form beyond the blur. The faint outline of the road stretching out, empty and dark, the broken guardrail glistening under flashes of distant lightning, and with it that sound returns, low and far away. An engine, steady this time, real, not imagined. The dog lifts his head, ears forward, body tense, every instinct, sharpening at once, and the scent reaches him before the sound grows louder, carried thinly through the damp air, familiar in a way that tightens his chest, not safe, not right, something that does not belong to help or rescue, but to something else entirely. He stands slowly, stepping away from the Marine, just far enough to see beyond him, his posture shifting, no longer only protective, but alert in a deeper way, a readiness that has nothing to do with training commands and everything to do with memory etched into muscle and bone. The engine grows louder, headlights cutting faintly through the rain in the distance, still far but closing, and the dog's gaze locks onto it, unblinking, his body angled between the light and the man behind him, as if he understands the space he now occupies, the line he has drawn without ever being taught to do so. For a second, the Marine stirs again, a faint sound escaping his throat, barely a whisper, but enough to pull the dog's attention back, enough to remind him what matters most in this moment. And he lowers his head once more, nudging the man's shoulder, checking, reassuring, staying, even as the sound of the approaching vehicle hums steadily closer. The wind shifts again, carrying that scent more clearly now, metal, oil, something concealed beneath it that feels wrong in a way words cannot explain, and the dog's ears flick back, his body tightening, a low, quiet growl building in his chest, not loud, not reckless, but controlled, deliberate, the kind of warning that does not need to be heard to exist. He does not move away. He does not retreat into the darkness where he could disappear and survive alone. Instead, he stands his ground in the open, rain falling over him, chain marks still visible against his neck, eyes fixed forward as if whatever is coming, whatever steps out of those headlights, will have to pass through him first before it ever reaches the man behind him. And in that silent choice, something unspoken becomes clear, something that does not need language to be understood, that even broken things, even those once left behind and forgotten, can still choose to stand between life and the storm, can still decide, without hesitation, that they will not let another soul be left alone in the dark. The headlights grow larger, cutting through the rain in pale, trembling beams that stretch across the wet road and spill down into the ditch, turning everything into sharp contrasts of light and shadow. And the dog does not move, not even as the engine slows, not even as the tires hiss against the soaked pavement, because the scent has already told him what the light has not yet revealed, and it is enough. He stands there, body steady despite the tremor in his legs, ears forward, eyes fixed, the low growl in his chest deepening just slightly, not a threat thrown wildly into the storm, but a warning held close, controlled, deliberate, the kind that carries weight without needing volume. Behind him, the Marine breathes again, a little stronger now, a shallow inhale followed by a longer exhale, and the dog flicks his ear back for a fraction of a second, checking, always checking before returning his full attention to what approaches. The vehicle comes to a stop along the broken stretch of guardrail, engine idling, its hum blending with the wind, and for a moment nothing happens, the rain falling steadily between them, the distance measured not in yards but in intent, in what is known and what is not yet spoken. Then a door opens, slow, deliberate, the sound carried clearly despite the storm, and a figure steps out, tall, composed, outlined only by the glare behind him, his face still hidden, but his presence unmistakable in the way he moves, unhurried, certain, as if this place, this moment, belongs to him. The dog's posture shifts almost imperceptibly, weight distributing forward, ready but not reckless, his gaze locked onto the silhouette, and something inside him recognizes the pattern, not from sight, but from memory, from the way the air feels when this man is near, from the way every instinct tightens at once without needing explanation. The figure pauses near the edge of the road, looking out into the darkness below, and though his features remain obscured, there is a stillness to him that carries something colder than the rain, something calculated, as if he is measuring the scene before him, confirming what he expects to find. The dog takes one step forward, placing himself fully between the light and the Marine, his body forming a barrier that is small against the vastness of the night, yet absolute in its intent, and the chain mark at his neck catches the light for just a second, a faint line that tells a story without words. The man tilts his head slightly, noticing, not surprised, not alarmed, just aware, and though no words are spoken, The silence between them feels heavy with something unspoken, something unfinished. The wind shifts again, carrying the scent stronger now, and the dog's growl deepens, low and steady. Not rising, not breaking, just present, a line drawn in sound as much as in stance. And still he does not advance, does not retreat. He simply holds his ground. Behind him, the Marine stirs once more, a faint movement of his arm, a breath that comes a little easier, and the dog senses it instantly, grounding himself in that fragile sign of life, even as his eyes remain fixed forward. The figure by the road takes a step closer, boots crunching softly against gravel, the distance closing inch by inch, and the dog's muscles tighten. Every part of him aligned with a single purpose, not to attack, not to flee, but to stand, to remain, to make it known without a single word that whatever happens next, whatever decision is made in the shadow of this storm, will not pass without resistance, because he has already chosen. Long before this moment, long before the rain and the darkness and the cold, that he will not leave another behind, not again, not ever. The rain begins to thin, not stopping, but easing just enough for sound to travel farther, clearer, and in that fragile shift, the silence between them grows heavier, stretched tight between the man on the road and the dog in the ditch, both holding their ground in ways that do not need to be spoken aloud. The figure steps closer, the beam of light falling across his coat now, revealing clean lines, deliberate movement, and a calm that does not belong to someone caught in a storm by accident. And though his face remains partly shadowed, there is no urgency in him, no concern, only a quiet certainty that settles into the air like something long planned. The dog does not lower his gaze, does not soften, his body still angled forward, a barrier built not from strength alone, but from choice, from something deeper than instinct, and the low sound in his chest continues, steady as a heartbeat, a warning that does not waver. The man pauses at the edge of the ditch, looking down now, his eyes tracing the outline of the Marine, the mud, the broken ground, and finally the dog. And for a moment, something flickers there, not surprise, not confusion, but recognition, the kind that comes when something believed to be gone is suddenly standing in front of you again. The wind shifts, carrying the scent between them more clearly, and the dog's ears twitch as memory sharpens. Fragments of places and moments stitched together by smell, by tone, by the weight of unseen things, and his body tightens further, not out of fear, but out of certainty. The man exhales slowly, the sound almost lost in the rain, and though he does not speak, his posture changes just enough to reveal intent, not rushed, not aggressive, but purposeful, like someone stepping toward something that already belongs to him. The dog takes a single step forward, closing the distance by inches, placing himself fully in the path, his stance firm despite the tremor that runs through his legs, and behind him, the Marine shifts again, a faint groan escaping his throat, barely audible, but enough to anchor the dog in the moment, enough to remind him why he stands. The man's gaze flicks briefly to the movement, then back to the dog, and the silence deepens, filled with everything that is not being said, everything that hangs between past and present like the storm clouds above them. For a second, it feels as though time has slowed, as though the world itself is waiting to see which way this moment will turn, and then from somewhere beyond the bend in the road, another sound breaks through, distant at first, then growing, the unmistakable rhythm of a second engine, steady, approaching, different from the first in a way that shifts the air instantly. The dog hears it before the man reacts, ears snapping toward the new direction, body still held in place but alert in a new way, and something changes in the space between them, subtle but real, like a balance tipping just slightly off-center. The man turns his head, just a fraction, listening, calculating, and for the first time, there is the faintest hesitation in his stillness, a pause that was not there before. The dog does not move from his place, but his growl softens into something quieter, not because the threat is gone, but because something else has entered the moment, something unseen but felt, and in that shift, the night no longer belongs entirely to the storm or to the man who stepped out of it, because now there's another presence approaching, one that carries a different weight, a different scent, and the fragile line between danger and survival begins, just barely, to bend in a new direction. The second engine grows louder, steady and grounded, its rhythm cutting cleanly through the thinning rain like something that belongs to order rather than chaos. And the difference is immediate, almost tangible, as if the air itself recognizes it before anything else does. And the dog's ears remain locked in that direction for a moment longer before he shifts his focus back, never fully turning away from the man at the edge of the ditch, never giving up the line he holds. The headlights from the approaching vehicle crest the bend slowly, not rushing, not swerving, but controlled, deliberate, sweeping across the wet road and catching the broken guardrail in a wide arc of pale light before settling closer, illuminating the scene in fragments. The Marine on the ground, the dog standing firm, the lone figure above them. And for the first time, the distance between all three feels measured, defined, no longer hidden entirely by shadow. The man near the ditch straightens slightly, his posture tightening in a way that reveals awareness, calculation, a subtle shift that might go unnoticed by anyone else, but not by the dog, who reads movement the way others read words. And something in that small adjustment confirms what he already knows. The second vehicle slows, tires rolling over wet gravel with a soft crunch, then stops several yards back, its engine idling low, steady, patient, and for a moment, no one moves, the storm easing into a quiet drizzle, the wind settling just enough for every sound to carry with clarity, every breath, every shift of weight, every heartbeat that still refuses to fade. A door opens from the second vehicle, quick but not abrupt, followed by the sound of boots meeting pavement, firm and purposeful, and though the figure is not yet fully visible, the presence carries something different, something that does not press into the space, but steadies it like a hand placed gently on something fragile to keep it from breaking. The dog senses it immediately, not as safety, not yet, but as something that does not carry the same sharp edge, something that does not tighten his chest in the same way, and his growl softens further, fading into silence without fully disappearing, his body still positioned between the Marine and the first man, unwavering, but no longer alone in the balance of the moment. The man at the edge of the ditch does not step forward again, does not retreat, but his stillness changes, no longer entirely controlled, no longer entirely his, as if the arrival of another presence has shifted the ground beneath him in ways he did not expect, and his gaze flicks once more toward the road behind him, measuring distance, weighing options, though he does not yet move. The dog remains exactly where he is, rain dripping from his fur, chest rising and falling with quiet effort, his eyes moving only enough to track both directions now, the man in front of him and the unseen figure behind, holding both in his awareness without turning his body, because turning would mean breaking the line, and that is something he'll not do. Behind him, the Marine breathes again, deeper this time, a fragile but undeniable sign of return, and the dog hears it, feels it, anchors himself to it, as if that breath alone is enough to justify everything that has led to this moment, every step through mud, every pull against the weight of the storm. The second figure steps closer now, still not fully revealed, but close enough for the light to catch the outline of a uniform jacket, damp but intact, and a voice, low and steady, finally breaks the silence, not loud, not commanding, but certain, carrying across the short distance with a calm that does not need force to be heard. And in that instant, something shifts again, subtle but undeniable, as if the night itself has decided it will not end the way it was meant to, and the dog still, standing between two worlds, holds his ground, waiting, watching, ready for whatever comes next, but no longer facing it alone. The voice settles into the space like a steady hand, low and even, carrying no urgency, but no doubt either, and it does something the storm could not do. It quiets the moment just enough for everything to become clearer, sharper, as if the world has shifted from chaos into something measured, something that can be understood. The dog does not turn immediately, but his ears pivot toward the sound, catching every tone, every subtle shift, And what he hears does not tighten his chest the way the other man's presence does. It does not carry that edge, that weight of something concealed, and slowly, just slightly, the tension along his spine eases, though his stance does not change, still standing between the Marine and the man at the ditch, still holding the line he chose. The second figure steps closer into the light, and now the details come into focus, a uniform damp with rain, boots steady on the gravel, posture grounded, and though the distance remains, there's something familiar in the way he moves, something that belongs to order, to training, to a world the dog once knew before everything changed. The Marine behind him stirs again, stronger now, a breath that draws deeper, a faint shift of his shoulder against the ground, and the dog feels it immediately, anchoring himself again to that fragile return, because everything still depends on it, every choice, every second that passes. The man at the edge of the ditch remains still, but the stillness is no longer the same. It is no longer entirely controlled. There's a fracture in it now, a hesitation that spreads through his posture like a crack beneath the surface. And though he does not step back, he does not step forward either, caught in the narrow space between what he intended and what is now unfolding in front of him. The second figure's voice comes again, steady, closer this time, not raised, not forced, just present, and the words are simple, but they carry weight, the kind that does not demand obedience but expects it, and the dog listens, not to the meaning of the words, but to the way they are spoken, the rhythm, the calm, the absence of threat, and something deep inside him responds, something older than the chain that once held him, older than the fear that shaped him, something that remembers what it felt like to stand beside someone and not against the world alone. The wind shifts again, lighter now, carrying fewer scents, and in that clarity, the dog lifts his head just enough to look back, not fully turning, not abandoning his position, but acknowledging the presence behind him, the one that has stepped into this moment without force, without fear, and for the first time since the storm began, the space feels different, not safe, not yet, but no longer entirely hostile. The man near the ditch exhales slowly, his gaze moving once more between the dog and the approaching figure, calculating, adjusting, and then, almost imperceptibly, he takes a step back, just one, small but undeniable, and the balance shifts again, the line that had been drawn now holding, not breaking, not yielding. The dog does not chase, does not advance. He simply remains where he is, rain dripping from his fur, chest rising and falling with quiet effort, his eyes steady, because this was never about moving forward. It was about not moving away, about staying when everything else tried to pull him back into darkness. Behind him, the Marine draws in a deeper breath, a faint sound escaping with it. Not pain, not fear, just the sound of someone returning, and the dog lowers his head slightly, listening, staying close, holding both worlds in place, the past that stands in front of him and the future that now approaches from behind. And for the first time, the storm feels like it is losing its grip, not because it has ended, but because something stronger has stepped quietly into its place. The man steps back again, not hurried, not panicked, but measured, as if the ground beneath him has shifted in a way he cannot fully control anymore, and the space that once belonged to him begins to loosen its grip, inch by inch, the certainty fading into something quieter, something uncertain. The second figure moves forward with steady intent, boots finding firm ground even as the rain continues to fall lightly, his presence filling the space not with force, but with clarity, and as he draws closer, the light reveals more, the outline of a badge, the faint glint of something official against his jacket, and though no loud commands are given, no sudden movements made, the shift is undeniable. The balance no longer held by one side alone. The dog remains exactly where he is, still forming that living barrier between the Marine and the world beyond. But his posture begins to change in small ways. The tension no longer locked at its highest point, his shoulders lowering just a fraction, his breath slowing, though his eyes never leave the man who now stands a step farther away. The Marine behind him exhales again, deeper this time, a fragile but growing rhythm returning to his breathing, and the dog feels it through the ground, through the closeness of their bodies, through the quiet connection that has formed without words, and he shifts back slightly, just enough to check, to press his nose gently against the man's sleeve, confirming that the life he fought to protect is still there, still holding on. The second figure crouches now, careful, deliberate, his movements slow and open, not reaching past the dog, not breaking the boundary that has been drawn, but respecting it, acknowledging it, and his voice comes again, softer this time, closer, carrying something steady and grounded that does not demand trust but invites it, and the dog listens, not to the meaning but to the tone, to the absence of threat, to the presence of something familiar in a way that feels distant yet real. The man by the road does not move forward again, does not speak, and after a moment longer, he turns just slightly at first, then fully, stepping back toward the vehicle he arrived in, his silhouette fading into the dim light, not chased, not confronted, but leaving nonetheless, as if whatever he came for no longer belongs to him. The engine of his vehicle hums briefly, then grows louder as it pulls away, its lights disappearing into the distance, swallowed by the curve of the road and the thinning storm. And with it, something lifts from the air, something heavy and unseen that had pressed down on everything. The dog watches until the last trace of that presence is gone, until the scent fades enough that it no longer lingers in his chest. And only then does he fully turn, stepping back toward the Marine, lowering himself beside him once more, his body no longer rigid, but still close, still protective in a quieter way. The second figure reaches out slowly now, stopping just short, allowing the dog to see, to choose, and after a brief pause, the dog does not pull away, does not growl, he simply remains, watching, breathing, present, as if the long stretch of holding alone has finally eased into something shared, something steadier. The rain continues to fall, soft now, almost gentle, and in that quiet moment, the storm that once threatened to take everything feels distant, as if it has passed not just through the sky, but through them as well, leaving behind something fragile but real, something that did not exist before this night. A line held, a life kept, and a silence that no longer feels empty, but full. The storm fades into a quiet drizzle that barely touches the ground, the wind no longer tearing through the night, but moving gently now, as if whatever rage it carried has already passed, leaving behind only the soft rhythm of rain against gravel and the distant echo of waves beyond the dark horizon. And in that calm, everything feels slower, clearer, as if the world itself is catching its breath. The Marine lies still, but not the same stillness as before, not the hollow absence that hovered between life and loss, but something steadier now, something grounded, his chest rising and falling in a quiet rhythm that no longer fights the air, but moves with it. And beside him, the dog remains close enough that their warmth blends, his body no longer trembling as violently, his breathing deepening. Matching the slow return of the man he refused to leave behind. The second figure kneels fully now, careful and measured, checking without haste, hands moving with quiet purpose. And though words are spoken, they are low, almost lost to the soft rain, not commands, not urgency, but reassurance, the kind that settles into the space rather than breaking it apart. And the dog listens, watching every movement, every shift, not guarding in the same way as before, but present, aware, as if the role he has carried is slowly being shared. A faint sound escapes the Marine then, not a groan, not pain, but something softer, a breath shaped into the beginning of a word that never fully forms, and his hand moves slightly against the ground, fingers curling weakly before resting again, and the dog sees it instantly, lowering his head, pressing his nose gently against that hand, holding it there for a moment as if confirming something deeper than sight, something that does not need to be spoken. The chain that once dragged behind him lies, forgotten now in the mud, half covered by rain, no longer pulling, no longer defining the shape of his movement, and in the quiet space that follows, it feels distant, like something that belonged to another time, another life that has already begun to fade. The vehicle behind them idles softly, its steady hum no longer a threat, but a promise, a way forward. And after a moment, the second figure rises slightly, signaling without force, and the space shifts again, not with tension, but with transition, as if the night itself is opening just enough to let something new begin. The dog does not hesitate, but he does not rush either. He simply stays close as the Marine is carefully lifted, his body responding faintly, breath steady, alive in a way that matters. And as they move, step by step toward the waiting vehicle, the dog follows without being called, without needing direction, because some bonds are not given orders, they are chosen. The rain continues to fall, soft and steady, washing the road, the mud, the traces of what almost was. And as the door closes gently and the engine begins to carry them away, the dog settles near, close enough to feel the presence he protected, his head lowering slowly, eyes half closing, not from exhaustion alone, but from something deeper, something that finally allows him to rest. Outside, the storm fades completely into the distance, leaving only the quiet hum of the road ahead. And inside, in that small shared space, there is no victory, no triumph spoken aloud, only the steady presence of two lives that did not let go. And in the silence between breaths, something unspoken lingers, soft and certain, that even in the darkest night, even when everything seems already decided, there are still choices that can change the ending. And sometimes, those choices come not from words, but from the quiet courage of something that refused to walk away. In the middle of a relentless coastal storm, a wounded Marine lies on the edge of survival, while a tortured German Shepherd K9 refuses to leave his side, creating one of the most powerful animal stories ever told through quiet loyalty and unspoken courage. As the rain pours and the night closes in, the dog fights not with force but with presence, dragging, guarding, and standing between danger and the man he chooses to protect, turning this into one of those unforgettable animal stories where instinct becomes something deeper, something almost spiritual. When a mysterious figure emerges from the darkness, the tension builds into a silent confrontation. Yet the German Shepherd K9 does not retreat, showing the kind of devotion that defines the most emotional animal stories, where even broken souls can become protectors. As another presence arrives and shifts the balance, the Marine slowly returns to life, breath by breath, while the dog transitions from defender to companion, proving that the bond between a Marine and a loyal K9 can transcend fear, pain, and abandonment, making this one of the most meaningful animal stories rooted in resilience and trust. By the time the storm fades and the road opens forward, what remains is not victory or revenge, but a quiet miracle shaped by loyalty, sacrifice, and a refusal to leave another behind, capturing the essence of animal stories that stay with you long after the final moment, where even in darkness, something still chooses to stay. Character 1. Adult German Shepherd K9, about 5 years old, wet sable coat black and tan, visible chain mark on neck, lean muscular build, amber eyes intense, front-facing view, cinematic lighting, realistic texture, storm atmosphere. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Character 2, white male Marine about 34 years old, full body view standing beside German Shepherd reference dog. Wet tactical jacket, rugged build, short dark hair, exhausted expression, cinematic lighting, storm. Environment, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, realistic proportions.